Okay, welcome back everybody to our second session, Youthful Ventures, Insights into the Next Generation entering the entertainment market. I'm not sure why they asked me to moderate this session. My wife says I'm the oldest 35-year-old that she knows. But let me introduce a great panel. Firstly, let me introduce Dan. Dan's been in the entertainment industry for more than 10 years, from Wild Wadi, Dubai, to Legoland, to Malaysia. The last 4 years in Vietnam as Director of Operations for Vietnam's newest parks and attractions, and recently joined Kadia for the Entertainment Strategy Division. How recently?
Literally today is my second day, so I'm very honored to be here, and a lot of stuff that's coming this way.
So welcome, Dan, and welcome to Saudi Arabia. Travis is the Director of Product Development for the Royal Commission of Alula, where he works on sustainably developing an area the size of Belgium. With as many fries or not as many Belgian fries?
Well, there's one key missing factor to the Belgian fry and beverage, but that's all right. It's still delicious there.
But from activating adventure outdoors to hosting world-class sporting events, developing unique experiences, and enhancing the region's UNESCO World Heritage Site, Travis loves introducing the world of Alula and calling Saudi Arabia home, and I'm sure he's going to tell you more about it shortly. And finally, on the far end is Taylor Jeffs, the President and Chief Creative Officer of Legacy Entertainment, market leader through much of Asia, where they've opened $9 billion of projects, so just a small number, just a small couple of things, including the world's largest indoor theme park and the world's largest aquarium. So welcome to all of you. Let me start, let me throw this out there. What are key preferences, trends that you guys have observed for the younger generation as they enter the entertainment industry in somewhere like Saudi Arabia that's pretty young? Maybe we start with Dan.
Yeah, so the younger generations that are visiting parks now, well, we can see a lot, some trends from Asia that I can also see happening in the Middle East, is that they have a very high expectation of not just the ride experience, but the thematic experience all around, where they are looking for not just going onto a roller coaster, but everything has to look beautiful, and they want to take pictures with it, they want to share, they come in groups, and it's very much about showing that you're going to the park and not just going to the park and keep that between your family, but the shared experience is something that we see I've seen in the last few years in Vietnam that has grown a lot, in Indonesia where there's so many young people, and I think that will be consistent here too, especially where the industry is so new, they don't know what to expect yet, but they'll get accustomed to beautiful entertainment very, very quickly.
Travis, do you see that in Alula? Is that resonating?
So what's fascinating is that in Saudi especially, the majority of the entertainment understanding is by social media, right? And so social media is always this contrived or this perfect understanding of something. And so there really is a different perspective of reality that comes into play when people experience something for the first time and it doesn't look as perfect or isn't as wild and exciting as the influencers make it look, right? So we do have to curb expectations in a way, but as a service provider for anybody who is coming into our industry and enjoying it, we do have to go that extra mile to make sure that they do get a little of their expectations. And I think that that's on us as planners, but also on the operators as the expectation is already there and we know it is, so we have to tailor to that.
Taylor?
Just to build upon what these gentlemen were saying, the social media usage here in Saudi is over 94%, and with an average over 3 hours a day. So it's critical. And then to build upon what you were saying in regards to Asia, you know, if you go to Shanghai Disneyland now, Universal Studios Beijing, people are coming to the park just for the social media experience. Some aren't even riding any attractions. They're coming and photo ops. We did this together in one of our parks in Indonesia recently. It's a whole park of photo ops because that's what people are coming for now. That, you know, when we were all growing up, it was all about the attractions, right? But now it's about the snacks and the photo ops. The attractions are equal to that. And that's really a new thing more so post-COVID than even beforehand.
And we touched on this, and Travis just touched on it, on social media and use of technology. How do you guys think that's changing consumption habits, and how has that shaped the landscape for us?
I'll take this one. So as mentioned, we get a lot of people seeing things through a lens, and it may not be their lens, and they're looking at it from a screen, which actually is to our benefit in a place like Alula, because you can't capture the natural beauty and you can't capture a UNESCO World Heritage Site on a 2-inch, 3-inch screen, right? So we actually have an advantage, which is the exploratory capacity of the entertainment in a place like Alula, in a place like Daria, in a place like what Qiddiya is going to have. You can't necessarily capture that. And so it really is, it's up to us to design that experience in a way that promotes the location and promotes the uniqueness of what we have to offer, instead of something that can be copy-pasted from everywhere else in the world.
And if I could add to that, the advantage that we all have is we get to learn from everything that's been done before. So we get to learn from the good and the bad. And all these parks around the world are retrofitting themselves for technology. We get to do that from the ground up. No one's ever had that advantage before. Again, we're really strong in Asia. We're doing a really interesting park in Korea for CJ right now. They want the most connected park that's ever been done before. And I'm sure many of these ideas will play into what we're all doing together here. Again, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but they want a park where your entire experience is documented, that every ride seat has a video camera on it where you'll be captured and you can take that experience home or upload it to YouTube or whatever you want to do. Again, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I'm not the judge of that, but let's see. We'll see what happens. It's very interesting.
Dan, did you see similar, and do you see it translate into this market as well?
Yeah, I think that I'm on board with what the other two panelists said, and I think the addition, which I think Travis may have referred to, is that it can also be a risk, right? Where we say it's all looking beautiful and this is what you should expect, but we have to live up to that expectation. And I think that's sometimes the challenge, which you might not see, and it can have a negative impact too. The parks that I worked on had millions of visitors, and what you see is the beautiful picture. If you know something about Vietnam, maybe you know the Golden Hand Bridge. That looks beautiful in pictures because there's no one on the bridge. But the reality of when you go to that place is that it's packed with people, and that there's 6 different cable cars that go up the mountain, and how do we manage that capacity of 10, 20,000 people a day who have to all be transported, who have queue lines to deal with. And so I think that there's a very important balance that we need to strike with the expectation that people have and how much we can accomplish to make sure that we deliver on that guest experience.
So we take about these learnings and we talk about these fascinating impacts. What about when it gets difficult? What are the challenges that you guys see? What are the constraints? What's difficult for the youth entering this kind of market? Maybe we start on the end with Taylor.
I think there's a huge learning curve. That's one of our owners of the company, he says you can only learn how to build a theme park by doing it twice, from beginning to end. And I think that's true. So that's something that we really make a cognizant effort, is to mentor the younger generation coming into the industry and give them the tools they need to succeed, because this is basically the most complicated thing you can design. I mean, we're taking all the most complicated mediums in the world, fire stations, hospitals, life safety, aquariums, and putting them all together. I mean, that's insane, but we do it.
That's exactly right. So every time we create something, we're building a mini city. It's a microcosm of reality, only condensed in a place where you have a density that far outweighs reality, or any place outside of the park. And we're seeing that too with anytime you have a destination city. It's the same thing. It's kind of like a startup, right? But it's a startup city. So you have to plan for everything from vehicular circulation, pedestrian circulation, health, safety, attractions. What happens when people stand in lines? What happens when people are hungry? What happens when people have to go to the bathroom? All of that. And so it's not as simple as it may look or feel or people have been told. And so when you talk about youngsters coming in, and I get to say that now that I'm old, I mean, how many people in the audience remember their first job? Right? That is something you don't lose, right? My first job, I was digging ditches for in-ground sprinkler systems. Like, I'm never going to forget that, right? I really don't do anything much different, just on a bigger scale now. But what's incredible is that people who are coming into our industry and it's their first job, like, this is something that they need to remember, and it's going to shape them and shape their careers from here on out. A lot of people that I know, especially in the water park industry, start out as lifeguards, and they've become hugely successful in the industry because they have that build. But the key is that they're successful because they had mentors that believed in them and taught them and trained them. And that's especially important in Saudi because it is our responsibility for people that have done these things. Like, this is all new. Entertainment is pretty new. I mean, when you're talking about a couple decades old, that's not even scratching the surface, right? And so what's happening in Saudi right now, it is our responsibility to train anyone who is willing to be a leader and to help people who are coming up through the ranks.
Yeah, I think I fully agree with what Travis said, and especially focusing on the long term. I think when you've got projects of these scales, it's, of course, maybe easy to get people excited about a job, but you want them to understand this is a career, because my experience in Asia is that people, they see it as a job, their first job, right? I'm going to be a lifeguard for a season. But actually, you can transition from a lifeguard into a team leader, into a supervisor, from lifeguarding to admissions to then doing operations. And actually, that long-term vision is so important, with education behind it, with mentors behind it. We need to deliver that support system, and that support system should not just focus on getting people in and excited, but also understanding this might be your job for the next how many years? Like, that's all of us. Like, 12 years, I started out as a personal trainer on Disney Cruise Line, and now 12 years later, I'm here and working on these amazing projects. So I think when you focus on the long term, that's the key value, and having the right support systems in place, like mentors, like career opportunities, that's really vital.
And let's talk about the Saudi cultural landscape. There's so much rich history here, so much rich culture, and I'm probably going to ask Travis to answer this first. How do you bridge that? How do you bridge it into the youthful market, and how do you bridge that into entertainment? And is it important? I mean, obviously you guys do, but where does that all come together?
So Saudi Arabia is country number 23 that I've worked in, and the most important thing in entertainment, especially entertainment, is to listen. So when you come into a new culture, when you come into a new area, the last thing you want to do is try and push everything that you think is right onto someone else. We are dealing with the most incredible local population of 6,000 years of human history in Alula. So they have a little bit more knowledge than I do about the region, right? And so the best thing is make sure that you pay attention and go and reach out. And we have Rawis that are local guides who bring guests and visitors through our cultural and heritage sites. These guys are a wealth of information. A lot of times they've either grown up in Alula or their parents have grown up in Alula. And what they have to offer, if we were in a traditional training sense and creating a booklet and didn't pay attention to what they had to say, you'd lose the authenticity of the experience. The authenticity is the most important success factor in a cultural or heritage site. Anything else can be copy-pasted, it can be designed, it can be built. No offense to Qiddiya, Qiddiya is absolutely amazing, but that doesn't necessarily have to be in that valley. That could, in theory, be somewhere else, except for the crazy, awesome rock outcroppings around it. But there really is a uniqueness to an area that has been untouched, and humans haven't spoiled it for millennia. And so it's super important to make sure that the local population has their say, and everything that we are doing impacts them on a much bigger scale than it impacts any of us. So we do have to be cognizant of that.
And Taylor, when you're designing around the world, how does that build in for you guys?
Coming at this from a different standpoint, we want to make sure that our projects are successful for everybody, that they're successful for the developer, successful for the guest. And for us, to make sure that something is commercially successful, we really encourage the developers we work with to lean into what's working already. So who's here? We're working with Sella on a few projects. They are unbelievable at capturing the local market and doing a great job of servicing that market. So we know the local market's here. There's sometimes 100,000 people a day at these projects, so let's service that. We know there's a demand, let's keep going with that. Religious tourism, to what you're talking about, that the market's already here. I mean, we've all learned so many great lessons from what's already been done in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. We've seen what works and what doesn't. So let's keep doing more of what works and then experiment a little bit.
Yeah, I think if I look back at how Vietnam started 15 years ago with the first theme park, they've got a population of 100 million, and just one of the groups, they have 7 parks now and do about 15 million visitors. And they started with trying to bring Europe and trying to bring crazy fantasy parks to life in Vietnam, because that's what Vietnam had never experienced. But actually, when you look at the parks that are being designed now, they focus on the history, the traditions of the Vietnamese, and you can just see the difference of the people who work on that. My background is very much in the operations, and you can see that the Vietnamese who work on these parks, on the stories that they grew up with as kids, they just get so much more committed. Superman for them is not the same thing that maybe some Western people grew up with, because they didn't have that when they grew up. And so it's those traditional stories, the traditions that they get to bring to life. I've seen fills them with immense pride, and you get to see that in the operations as well, when people are really committed and they get to share their country. I'm sure Travis, and at every project you'll see a variation of this, where people feel, I am opening up my country, I'm sharing this part of my history, of my people's history with you, and that just has such a big impact on the guest experience, but also on the work culture, on culture as a whole.
Awesome. And guys, do you have examples of what's been successful, or even anything that you've done on projects that's really been successful at captivating that young Saudi audience?
Good examples from outside of Saudi. But like in Vietnam, we did you've probably seen this, it's kind of goofy, I have to disclaim that. But we did a giant aquarium, the biggest aquarium in Vietnam, and it's a colossal turtle, because turtles are very important in Vietnamese mythology. So again, it may be goofy for all of us, but it works for the audience. They love it, it's a huge success. So we also have to listen to where the audience is and meet them there.
Travis, what captivates the guests in Alula? I turn up and I'm coming for that photo. What's the big success for you guys?
So for those people that have seen Alula in social media or have been there, what's unique about it is the rocks are incredible. It's very similar to like Sedona, Arizona, or Switzerland, or places that are, you get that screenshot and you're like, I know exactly where that is. Combine that with the local heritage of Petra, which is the Nabateans up in Jordan, and then they traveled down and they actually created tombs. The same culture came and created tombs in Lula. And so there's an area called Hegra. And so the idea there is that these things can't be found elsewhere, right? And so when you look at natural scenery, when you look at incredible cultural and heritage, what's the surprising difficulty for us is how do you modernize that without losing the history and without losing the excitement of stuff that we had nothing to do with, right? We're just bringing it to the attention of the rest of the world. So that's our struggle, is we have to make sure that we do it in a way that caters to someone who's looking to see the past with all the modern amenities of today.
And Dan, you've done it in an emerging market before, and you bring that experience here. How does that captivation work? What's been successful in your experience?
Yeah, I think there's a time and a place for everything, from fantastical FECs to beautiful, natural, historical monuments and visitor attractions. You need that range so that there is something for everyone. And I think that you just have to do right by the asset. You have to do right by the philosophy to take a beautiful natural monument and to put something in there that doesn't belong, that doesn't fit with the story. And I think that's the designer's job. That's everyone who understands about the culture looks at what is the right fit for this type of attraction. And from Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, I've seen all of those strategies work because there's something for everyone. Not everyone wants to go to a natural monument every single weekend. They want to do something else, right? So there has to be a mix of things, and what you do has to be done right. And I think that's what Travis mentioned with the challenge of trying to modernize it, right? Because if we've got that social media, those beautiful pictures, but it doesn't live up to that, or there's not the modern facilities, you have to queue up a long time for ticketing, which happened in Vietnam, where they just write your ticket by hand, right? That's the natural attractions in Vietnam, and how do you lift that up? And Saudi has this immense opportunity where they get to learn from hundreds of years of experience, hundreds of parks, and they get to say, how do we do this from scratch for a whole country with the whole range of products? And I think that's an incredible challenge for all of us here today.
And let me make it a little bit tough for you guys, and actually a tough one here. We know that the young audience is they're not always known as being a loyal audience. Younger people are more likely to have shorter relationships with attractions or services or products that they consume. So how do you build loyalty into attractions or into the design of attractions? How do you get them to keep coming back, and how do we manage that on a young market?
It's interesting. We first started talking about social media and how important that is. But on the flip side, we need to be careful that these are not one and done social media destinations. I've come, taken my photos, and now I'm done forever with it. And I think a great example that many of us have been to that we always come back to is Tivoli Gardens. And especially here in Saudi, how do we play to that local audience? How do we get them to come back hopefully every month, if not every week or so? And it's, I think, the directive we've taken is to create a diverse experience that, again, is much more than about the rides and attractions. It's about the shopping, the dining, the live entertainment, in addition to the social media experiences.
Travis, how do they keep coming back to Alula? What makes me visit for the second, third, fourth time?
So I'm going to take a step back and put on the hat that I used to wear to start. And that is when you develop, and what we were talking about earlier is developing these cities and these microcosms. What you're doing is you're creating an experience from the moment that you step out of before you even step out of your car, all the way until you get back in. And, or in the future, monorail or eVTOL or anything else, right? But the idea really is that someone has thought about that guest journey from the minute that it starts to the minute that it finishes. And so when I look back at the water parks that I've designed and the places that I've built, I'm looking at it from, am I going to have fun there? And if I, at any point during my guest journey, question that and say, I'm not sure this is right, then that's on me to change. That's the same mentality that I'm bringing to Alula, which is people are paying a lot of money to go to a destination which is pretty difficult to get to. It's easy when you're already in Saudi. It's an hour and 30-minute flight from here. But it's an effort to get to. It is not a major metropolitan area. It is definitely some place that you have to make an effort to get to. And so the idea there is, how do I make it as seamless, as easy, as efficient as possible, so that people want to explore more? The idea really is that when you bring somebody to a place, it is your responsibility to make sure that they have a good time and they enjoy it. And also, and this is what's going to happen with Dan talking next, I'm sure, is you have to make sure that they leave wanting more, right? So you can't always give everybody everything the first time. You absolutely have to hold something back or change it up or to create that new and exciting experience the next time you visit.
Yeah, indeed. It's from a beautiful design to a well thought out process and flow to then when everything gets built and you have everything you need, how do you make sure that the guest experience is amazing? Those young people you talked about, Saudi is an extremely young population. And from what I've seen, they're so excited to get in the industry. And the people who are in there, they're so committed. And I think we can even do better by by really making sure they understand this is not just a job again, but a career. And then what you would do in the parks is you make sure you empower them. This is a massive thing that we've seen all across the world work out, that when your staff is empowered to be creative, to deliver a good customer experience, instead of you managing them and restricting them and saying, you've never done this before, these are the procedures you need to follow, how can you empower them? When somebody drops their ice cream, are they going to get a new ice cream for the staff who says, oh, I'm so sorry? They bend down to the kids' level and they really focus on, look, our job is not just to operate the rides. Our job is not to sell ice cream. Our job is to deliver an experience. And sometimes, even in the parks that I've been in, you can see that they were told, your job is to sell retail items. Your job is to just get people through the turnstile. They don't think their job is to deliver happiness. Because if they knew that, they would be doing things differently. They would act differently. And the amazing thing is we have so many experts, hopefully, that will mentor this young generation into doing that. Because the rides, there will be a lot of rides. There will be a lot of roller coasters. And the theming will be different. The experience will be different. But many times guests have a hard time articulating why one roller coaster is very different than another and why their park experience is different. But when they get to remember what they did, who they did it with, which staff member helped them to get on the ride, when we all have name badges in parks, right? The reason why we do that is because we'd love it when our guest says, oh, I went onto this roller coaster and Travis helped my daughter who was a little bit scared, but he was so friendly and she did it and she felt like she actually overcame a challenge. That memory will always stay with that kid, and those parents will think about that experience of their kid overcoming, because it's a life-changing event. It's something that they thought they couldn't do, and now they're able to do it with your support. And it will be life-changing for everyone, including those staff that are actually part of that experience, because they are focused on the guest experience. They want to make that guest happy instead of just get their attendance numbers and get their efficiency.
And here's the million-dollar question. What's big? What's going to be the next trend for the next 5 years in this market? You guys have worked in it. You know about it. You've seen it. What does the future look like? What's the next big trend for the next 5 years?
It's a big balance, right? And everything is. But I think, again, learning lessons from what's been done, wow factor is so important, right? So on one side we have the wow factor. You're doing that in the biggest, most extreme way possible at Six Flags. And the whole world is talking about that. That's something that Saudi is doing that, it's easy to criticize in hindsight, but maybe that Dubai in the theme parks and Abu Dhabi, maybe at first in the theme parks, SeaWorld looks amazing. But they didn't quite have the wow factor that captured the world's imagination. You guys are doing it with the Falcon's Flight Coaster. Just lay people are talking about it across all over the world. So that's unbelievable. So Saudi has captured the world's imagination. So we have that already. People will come here to see that. On the flip side, we need to be thinking beyond 5 years out. We need to be thinking, what's the park that lasts not just 20 years, not just 30 years, but hopefully 60 years, 70 years. So that's the balance we're trying to strike. Wow factor with the timeless quality that will allow these projects to flourish when the tourism, when all the hype has died off. These still have to work. They still have to be commercially viable on their own.
Because I checked, they won't let me build a bigger coaster than Falcon.
No one can. No, it's not
5 years?
happening.
No, Neil, stop it. Travis, what does it look like? What does trends look like for you?
next big thing in Saudi is getting people outdoors. And Qiddiya is going to do that in a great way. And apologies if I mentioned that it wasn't super exciting before or that you could copy paste it. But the drive out to Qiddiya is one of those things that people who spend the majority of their time in Riyadh not understanding what is right out their back door. The cliffs are impressive. The sandstone is amazing. And just imagine that over the entire country and how diverse it is. What I find fascinating is that, I will be very honest, I was pretty ignorant when it came to the geology and the geography of Saudi Arabia before I came to the Middle East. What Saudi has to offer is extraordinary, between the Asir Mountains in the southwest and the Red Sea and what we have up in Alula in the northwest and all the way over in Dammam and Khobar. And there's just extraordinary geological and geographical features that are unique to Saudi. And in the United States, where I'm from, we have seen an incredible spike in our national parks. And it's because people realize that there's more to life than screens. There's more to life than being in FECs and malls and everything else. I'm not saying they're not important. They absolutely are. But there's also a world outside of the four walls and a roof that really does need to be explored. And how do we bring especially the youth, out to see that?
Yeah, I think if you're looking at worlds, you've got those natural worlds and those habitats, the animals, the natural experience that comes to life. And if you can do that in an authentic way, I think that's something timeless. And it gets to be developed here in a much bigger way and much quicker here in Saudi. But at the same time, you've got fantasy worlds that are coming to life. You've got the fastest, steepest roller coaster in the world that pushes boundaries, and that's something that everywhere in the world will need to adjust to. It's not just what's going to be next 5 years, in 5 years in Saudi, it's going to be everyone else that looks at Saudi and say, this is where the bar is now, and the guest experience needs to live up to that. The design experience needs to live up to that, and I think that's going to be so incredible that we say, hey, look, this is how you do it. When you get to do a whole park from scratch, this is the technology that you integrate. These are the memory sharing opportunities, and these are the authenticity that you bring. Many countries, I think, will get to learn from all the projects that are still in development here.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. And great panel and great questions. Let me just go ahead and I think we just have a few minutes to open the floor up for some questions. And if I can ask the guys for the mic, if anybody's got a question for the panel, for Taylor, Dan, or Travis.
Thanks so much for a great presentation, guys. Matt Dawson from JRA. You've touched on Dubai, so we have 20 years of success there. What's your top 1 or 2 lessons learned for what KSA can take out of the Dubai experience in the past 20 years, especially in light of the youthful market?
The first thing that comes to mind when you ask that is that you can't build Orlando overnight, right? So I mean, you think about all the most successful entertainment brands in the world. They all started small, and they all happened organically. So that's something we all have to be really cautious about, is being really honest with ourselves about who the market is, what the market is. I mean, it was fascinating going there at the very beginning in like 2008, when there was no infrastructure and all the sewage trucks lined up for 40 miles, just crazy, and saying this doesn't make any sense. And then cut to 10 years later, it didn't make any sense, at least in terms of the theme parks. So that's my big takeaway.
Any more questions?
Frank Nunez with Franken Design, a very young company, so it kind of really applies to the panel. Probably one of the newest companies attending for the last 3 years to Saudi, 2 years for this event. And one of the biggest successes that the largest theme parks in our area and the Western culture have is a lot of mentorship programs. And even though they have no experience, no capability, there's not a lot of value to add as an employee, they welcome them because they're training the next employees to come. So what is Alula doing? What is Qiddiya doing? Do programs exist where I know you guys are pulling a lot of great talent from a lot of great other companies, but is there an opening? Is there a program that allows someone who's in college in theme entertainment in Orlando or in Columbia for hospitality in New York to come over and spend a semester or a summer just shadowing someone of your caliber to train up and to be that next employee?
One of the things that we're doing is we're upskilling the public. And so what that means is we have coffee shops, we have F&B, we have areas of entertainment and just general life that we bring in local kids and we train them in a way that we make sure that they're ready before they see the public and the tourists and everybody else, right? So it's the same kind of thing with what you're talking about but that's an initiative that we have to instigate. That's not something that just comes naturally. That's something that there's a process that needs to be put in place. There's a standard that we need to bring people up to, because especially in a place like Alula where it's a luxury destination, luxury starts with guest service, right? And so if there's at any point somebody feels that they're not getting the service that they deserve or believe or that they think they should get when they pay for it, it completely drops the value of what we're providing. And that absolutely, that starts with the service. The other thing that we're working on is the mentorship. And the reason I say we is because my job, if I'm successful at it, I get to replace myself with a Saudi national. And that's super exciting for me. And it's not going to happen overnight. But my goal really is to make sure that the people that are working with me and under me are getting that education. And I'm teaching them everything that I can so that when the day comes that they are in the position that I know they're going to succeed when I'm not there, then I've done my job.
And I can echo that from the Qiddiya point of view as well. A while ago, a couple of years ago, we sent 55 students to Rosen College in Orlando to study their degree. Those students are now coming back and joining us in Six Flags and Aqua Arabia in our water park, and they've been out, and yes, we sent them to Orlando, and yes, they had a great education and a great opportunity for them. But the deal was they also had to work summer jobs. So they went to work in Six Flags in our parks in the US. They went to work in Universal. They went to work in Disney. They're now coming back with great rounded experience. And that's joining our parks, finding their feet. Where do they see themselves? Food and beverage, rides and attractions. How does that work out? That's only one initiative that we're taking for those students. We've got it across the board of bringing in, training, developing talent. And exactly, I'll echo what Travis says about somebody taking my job in a couple of years. I think maybe time for one last question.
I'm one of the students.
We have one Rosen student here.
Yes, sir, that's all.
So these guys now, and they'll tell you if you have a chance to talk later, gained incredible opportunity in the US and now have an incredible opportunity to work on projects like Qiddiya, or whether it's Alula or wherever you go. It opens the world up for people to be able to come and work. Because I think we're just about out of time, so let me say thank you to Dan, Travis, and Taylor. Join me in giving them a huge round of applause. Thank you so much, guys, for a great session to start at Saudi Entertainment Expo. And in just 5 minutes, you'll be able to join us for Design Technology and Storytelling Fusion, which is our next panel. Thank you so much.